Alrighty, so for today's lesson, we are going to be going over some different literary elements, and we're just going to go ahead and jump right into this lesson. So the first literary element we're going to talk about is foreshadowing. This is the use of clues that suggest events that have yet to occur. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and take you to this video. That's going to kind of show you some foreshadowing as an example. So if you see it now, it should be easier for you to kind of grasp when you're reading.
We're pals, right?
Right.
And we'll always be together, right?
Simba, let me tell you something that my father told me. Look at the stars. The great kings of the past looked down on us from those stars.
Really?
Yes. So whenever you feel alone, just remember that those kings will always be there to guide you. And so will I.
Okay, so that was an example of foreshadowing because we see Simba and his dad talking, and he's like, we're going to be together forever, right? And his dad goes on to say about the great kings in the sky, and they'll always watch him just like he will. That's foreshadowing to the event that, he's eventually going to die. Like a little hint into what's going to happen. Okay, next we have symbols and symbolism. We could talk about this forever, but this is anything that stands for or represents something else. So something tangible could stand for something intangible. Just like if you are giving like a girl some flowers, that normally is something tangible, but showing that you love her. Okay. Next, we have a surprise ending. This is a twist at the end of the story, something that you did not expect. So something that makes you go, oh my gosh, no way did that just happen. Okay, that's another literary element that we look for and we see a lot in different stories. Okay, kind of like Inception. We didn't expect that ending, right? Okay, now imagery. This is a descriptive or figurative language that appeals to one or more of the five senses. Obviously, we have sight, hearing, smell, touch, and taste. Imagery when it's talking about like the green grass or the smell of cookies. That's all hinting at imagery, right? Okay. Next we have mood. This is the feeling created in the reader by the literary work or passage, also known as atmosphere. Oh, go back. Okay, so mood is anything that kind of makes you feel. It's the atmosphere. Next we have tone. This is the writer's attitude towards his or her subject. So example, a tone could be serious, humorous, sarcastic, indignant, or objective. And I do have a little video clip for you guys about tone. Bear with me just a moment. It's as if Moana was a horror trailer to show you how important tone is. This tone affects the mood.
Or you chose the wrong tattoo.
Why are you acting weird?
I'm the village president. That's my job.
If there's something you want to tell me, just tell me. Is there something you want to tell me?
Is there something you want to hear?
Okay, so I'm not going to play the whole clip, but you guys kind of get the idea, and we get this idea of the writer's attitude by what they say, okay, and how they write it, which is going to affect the mood that we get from it, okay? Tone and mood go hand in hand. Next, we have irony, and now this is a literary technique that portrays the difference between appearance and reality, expectation and result, or meaning and intention. So just like this, this is like an old a bottle called Rust-Oleum. It stops rust, but it's completely covered in rust. This would be completely ironic, right? Now there's 3 different types of irony. There is verbal irony. This is when an author says one thing and means something else. Dramatic irony is when an audience perceives something that a character in the literature does not know. And irony of situation, or situational irony, is a discrepancy between the expected result and the actual result. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you guys examples of verbal irony, dramatic irony, and situational irony. So hopefully you guys get a good idea of each of these, okay? Okay, so here is verbal irony.
Entertain. I like my privacy.
You know I do too. That's another thing we have in common. Like, I hate it when you got somebody in your face, you trying to give them a hint and they won't leave, and then there's that big awkward silence, you know. Can I stay with you?
Okay, so that's an example of verbal irony, because we see the author says one thing and means something else, just like Donkey's like, I love my privacy. Don't you just hate when blah, 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 and he's doing the exact same thing that he's saying that he hates. Okay. Now, dramatic irony.
Call security! Wait, no, I'm sorry! I was just looking for a souvenir! My name's Lily Truscott, and I'm a huge fan.
Okay, so what we know about Hannah Montana is that this girl, Hannah, and Lily are actually best friends, but at this point in time, she doesn't know that her best friend is Hannah Montana, but we know that, and I'm not going to play this entire clip. If you want to watch it, you can Google Hannah Montana dramatic irony, okay? But we understand as the audience what's really going on, but the character doesn't, and that character would be Lily, right? Next, we're going to go into situational irony. Now, remember, situational irony is the discrepancy between the expected result and the actual result. Okay, now what's ironic about this situation is the expected result is for the squirrel to wake up all the jaguars by making the balloon and popping it. But in fact, what actually wakes up the jaguars is him laughing, right? So this makes this situational irony. Okay, moving right along. Okay, now we get into kind of characterization in a little bit, but it is another literary element, is characters. So first in our character list, we have the antagonist. Now this is the character in the story that opposes the main character. Now that would be like Voldemort or like Lex Luthor, okay? It's just anybody who's opposing the main character of the story. That doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad guy. In a hero story, it could mean they're a bad guy. But it just depends on who the main character is. Now, the protagonist is the main character of a work of fiction, just like Harry Potter was the protagonist, obviously, in the Harry Potter series. Okay, next we have alliteration, which is the repetition of initial consonant sounds. So, brilliant, beautiful, and bold, the blinding light beamed. It's a repetition of these B's over and over again, okay? Now, I know there's a lot of these. You can always pause them or come back to this lesson to understand them fully, but I wanted to give you guys a wide range of different literary elements for you guys to understand and know and have in your back pocket and reference to. Okay, it's the repetition of initial consonant sounds is alliteration. Okay, here are just some different alliterations, like Awful Alice ate ants, or She sells seashells on the seashore, or Hale and Hearty, fit as a fiddle, down in the dumps, turn the tables. Okay, those are all example of alliterations, like tongue twisters, familiar phrases. Okay, authors use these a lot so they stick in our head. It's a great literary element to use, especially in poetry. Next, we have suspense, which is a feeling of curiosity or uncertainty about the events in a literary work. It's that kind of like anxiety, like feeling that we get, right? That creates a suspense. We feel it a lot in movies, like in thrillers or horror movies, but we can get that too in a really good book. Next, we have theme. Now, this is really important. Now, a theme is a central message or insight into life revealed through a literary work. Now, this is either directly or it's implied. So, like in Romeo and Juliet, it's kind of like a direct theme about like love and innocence lost, because it kind of says it in the beginning. And then sometimes we have to dig a little deeper, like in the story of Tortoise and the Hare. The theme or the central message is slow and steady wins the race, right? And we kind of implying that by understanding who wins at the end. What's important is that it's a phrase. It's not a word, like the theme is love. That's not a theme. Okay, a theme is a central message or insight, and that's done in a sentence. Okay? Now we have an illusion. It's not an optical illusion, but an illusion in a literary work is the reference to a well-known person, place, event, literary work, or work of art. Like, for example, in like Martin Luther King's speech, he says like 7 years ago. That's an allusion back to actually Abraham Lincoln's speech. Or anybody is like talking about like Adam and Eve in a story, that's obviously a reference back into the Bible. Or a lot in times like we see in like movies and stuff, like they'll refer to like politics, and that's an allusion back to something that's happened. It's just a reference back to something that is well known that most people would understand. Now, what are these called? Like folk and fairy tales, realistic fiction, poetry, adventure, sports, mystery, historical fiction, nonfiction, and mythology. What are these called? These are, of course, called a genre, and this is part of literature and literary elements because it's a category of a type of literature. It's important for us to understand where to place things because it helps us kind of group and understand things better. So, for example, like poetry or drama, or there's prose. You're going to hear that word thrown around a lot your whole entire educational career. Now, prose is fiction, novels and short stories, and nonfiction, bios, autobios, letters, essays, and reports. It's pretty much prose is everything that doesn't fit into poetry or like drama, like plays. Now, next we have a short story, which is obviously a brief work of fiction. Simpler plot and setting than a novel, tends to reveal character in crucial moments rather than develop it. Obviously, short stories are the little things, and you're going to read a lot of those in this class. And then, like, a novel is like a book, right? Now, here are different elements of a short story that go into literary elements. There's character, there's characterization, and there's plot, and we'll get into all of these type of things for plot. Now, character is a person or animal who takes part in the fiction of a literary work. No, they're just characters. Just like SpongeBob, Patrick, Sandy, Squidward, SpongeBob, Plankton, Pearl, etc. Mr. Crab. Now, characterization is the act in creating and developing a character. This is going a little bit deeper. So we have direct characterization and indirect characterization. Now, direct characterization is where the character is talked about directly. And I do have a little clip to show you guys about direct characterization. Pull this right up for you. Now remember, this is when it's directly talked about, okay? The author's saying, like, her hair is blue, or her hair is blonde and her eyes are blue.
All the plastics from the same gym class.
Who are the plastics?
They're teen royalty. If North Shore was Us Weekly, they would always be on the cover.
That one there, that's Karen Smith. She is one of the dumbest girls you will ever meet. Damien sat next to her in English last year.
She asked me how to spell orange.
That little one, that's Gretchen Wieners.
She's totally rich because her dad invented toaster strudel.
Gretchen Wieners knows everybody's business. She knows everything about everyone.
That's why her hair is so big. It's full of secrets.
What's happening?
And evil takes a human form in Regina George. Don't be fooled, because she may seem like your typical selfish, but in reality, she is so much more than that.
She's the queen bee, the star. Those other two are just her little workers.
Regina George. How do I even begin to explain?
Okay, so now this is a direct characterization because they are directly talking about the characters, right? Okay. Now we have indirect characterization. This is where the author reveals information about the character without saying it explicitly. This is done in 5 different ways. Looks, speech, relationships, actions, and thoughts. Okay, and I do have a little clip, of course, for you guys about that. And while this is playing, I'm going to kind of talk you through why this is indirect characterization.
First day of school! Wake up! Wake up! Come on, first day of school!
I don't want to go to school. 5 more minutes.
Now, we're not talking directly about Nemo here, but what can we get? We can look at him. He's a fish. What type of fish is he? He's a clownfish. How is he speaking?
Not you, Dad, me!
Okay.
Get up!
He's excited. We can tell by his voice that he's a little kid and by the words he uses, like repeating, first day of school, first day of school. An adult's not going to say that, right? Relationship, obviously he's bouncing all over him. It's not directly said that that's his dad right away, but we can get that's his dad. And what can we tell about him right now?
School, time for school! Time for
Through his actions. He's obviously really excited about going to school, so he's eager. Okay, and thoughts, if we were to get into Nemo's head a little bit, that would be part of indirect characterization as well. And a lot of this is going to be implied. Okay, next we have conflict, which is an important literary element. Now, this is a struggle between 2 opposing forces. Obviously, the fight. Now, we have internal conflict. That's the character struggles with himself or herself. And an external conflict is the character struggles with an outside force. And a story can contain more than one conflict, so it's not just one or the other. It could depend on the certain situation. Now, internal conflict, of course I have an example for you. Let me just pull this right up. Now remember, internal is the character struggle with himself or herself.
So, how was the first day of school?
She's probing us.
I'm done. You pretend to be Joy.
What? Okay,
It was fine, I guess. I don't know. Oh, very smooth. That was just like Joy.
Something is definitely going on.
She's never acted like this before. What should we do? We're gonna find out what's happening, but we'll need support. Signal the husband.
Okay, so obviously from this clip, if you've seen Inside Out, obviously the feelings are the characters inside their heads, but it is an internal conflict that we see. It's the struggle of all of our emotions, like inside of us. Riley's obviously not going through a lot. They'd lost their happiness, so they don't know what to say or what to do, and the mom's kind of bugging them, and so we see that internal struggle. The mom's trying to help her, and we see that internal struggle, and what do we see with the dad? He's just watching the game now, isn't he?
Uh-oh.
Now he realizes, oh no, my internal struggle is my wife is mad. Okay, so that is an example of internal conflict. Now let's see external. Now this is a character that struggles with an outside source. Okay, so it's something that they're struggling against with. And what we're going to see a lot is like somebody who's actually fighting them, or they're fighting something. Just like here in Hercules when he's fighting Hydra. This would be an external conflict because guess what? He has to overcome this opposing force. Okay, so moving right along. Next we have a Freytags Pyramid, also called a story arc or plot diagram. There's exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, denouement or resolution. It also can look like this. There's expedition. This is just where it introduces the characters, the setting, and the basic situation. I'm not going to get too deep into this because you guys will find this lesson somewhere else later on in your year. And this is just where it's introducing everything. It's the start. Then you have rising action, all of the events leading up to the climax. And during the rising action, the basic conflict is complicated by the introduction of related secondary conflicts, including various obstacles that frustrate the protagonist's attempts to reach his or her goal. Also secondary conflicts, etc. Now we have the climax. This is the high point of interest or suspense in a story, novel, or play. It's also called like a turning point. It's the main like bum 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 moment of a story or movie. Like in Moana, I feel like her, we're obviously introduced to them in the basic situation. The rising actions are her like trying to get Maui, getting Maui, fighting those little monsters, and the main climax is trying to restore the heart of Te Fiti in that fight and struggle. And then the falling action, sorry, I'm using Moana as an example, is an action in the story after the climax is revealed. So during the falling action, the conflict between the protagonist and the antagonist unravels. Obviously, like in Moana, we kind of see, Te Fiti, the heart of Te Fiti is restored, and she defeats the monster, which is Te Fiti. She gets to go back home. And then the resolution is her and her family are wayfinders, and another example in Moana. So everything's kind of wrapped up. Everything left unsolved is solved. Okay, so that was kind of like a lot of information, and I hope it wasn't too overwhelming for you. I should probably leave this up for you so you're not just staring at nothing. But I guess I just want to again say to you that my office hours are on Thursdays from 1:15 to 2:15 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Use the link that was in your syllabus to contact me virtually. You can also call me, email me, and I'm here to help you. And you can contact me during normal business hours. But my office hours on Thursday are the best time to get that one-on-one help. Yeah, so literary elements, I mean, I could go on and on. There's so many. These are just a lot of really important ones that you're going to encounter. So they're important to know and understand. And if you have any questions about these, please let me know. The key word for this lesson is backpack. Okay? Now, again, the key word is backpack, so make sure you write that down. after watching this video into your lesson so you can get credit for this lesson. Again, office hours on Thursdays, 1:15 to 2:15 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. I hope you guys have a great day. Yeah, and let me know if you need anything. I'm always here for you.